Today we're talking about 5 super saloons you can buy from 30k down to 10k at 5k intervals that are the best value for money. Let's get straight into it. We're kicking off with our 30k car, and a car I was lucky enough to drive a while back thanks to my buddies at Motorland, the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio, and the car that surprised me on so many levels. Part of that surprise came from the great sounding 2.9 litre twin turbocharged V6 block that makes 502 brake horsepower, taking the car to 60 in 3.8 seconds, and it shares a few similarities with quite a common Ferrari V8 block. The thing I loved the most about this car was just how dumb it was. I've been lucky enough to drive a lot of very fast new cars, and though I've enjoyed driving many, it's rare I find anything new that just has ludicrous levels of soul. When you drive in any of the normal modes, it's pretty comfortable and quite unassuming, but the moment you put it in race, it becomes a different animal. It wants to throw you into the bushes every time you overstep the mark on the throttle, and it immediately tells you that you have to be a good driver to make the most of it and stay out of trouble. Back when Alfa Romeo were in F1, they would do passenger laps around tracks in the Giulia Quad during race weekends alongside Ferraris, Aston Martins and all sorts of other expensive metal, but it was always the Giulia you'd see throwing it sideways, making a ton of noise and basically being hooligans. And having driven one, I can absolutely see why. A lot of that performance came from the fact that it was first designed as the quad and then detuned for the lower specs, rather than being a tuned version of a standard car. It even managed to set the 4-door record at the Nürburgring with a 7-minute 32-second lap time, made possible by active aero that helps the car produce around 200 kilograms of downforce. You'll find them starting at around £28,000, and 30k will get you a 2018 example with 70,000 miles on it. Most problems noted on forums relate to the electrics, but these are genuinely not known to be particularly bad on reliability. Let's drop the budget by 5k now to our 25k car and the most powerful car on this list, and arguably the best sounding, the Mercedes E63S AMG. That S-Spec gets you some serious performance from the 5.5 litre twin turbocharged V8 that makes 576 brake horsepower, the most on this list, taking the car to 60 in 4 seconds. Pretty insane for a car that in the right spec can almost look like a bit of a sleeper, especially when you consider the car was originally tested by third parties managing around 3.5 seconds to 60, which is utterly bonkers pace. This thing was completely focused on dominating the autobahns. The only thing I'll say is that it was a bit of a shame to lose the original 6.2 litre naturally aspirated engine that he's got before the facelift, which I would argue one of the best sounding V8 engines you can possibly buy, even through to today. And I know this video is about saloons, but I would have to go for the estate myself to increase the sleeper status, of course, and to fit my golf clubs in the back. The facelift does look good in whichever shape you go for though, and it's a direct competitor to the F10 BMW M5, but the S-Spec helps it to be way more powerful, with 30 more brake horsepower than the standard E63 and 24 more than the M5. Ultimately though, the S was a rebadge for the performance pack that older generations of Mercedes AMG products got, and outside of the power there isn't too much to shout home about. 17 grand will get you a non-S version of one of these, and 25k will get you an S from 2013 with 60,000 miles on the clock. Owners on forums talk about the engine being very strong but a bit oil thirsty. It's also petrol thirsty with a 20 mile per gallon average fuel economy. Now we have the rarest car on this list as our 20k car, the Vauxhall VXR8, of which there are just 300 on the roads right now in the UK across all specs. And it's not just rare, it's unique when compared with other cars you'll see here in the UK, given its Australian muscle car vibes having been based on the Aussie Holden Special Vehicles Club Sport. Even though it wasn't a V8 supercar racing around Bathurst, in the UK it's about as close as we'll get. So all in, if you want a head turner from this list, this might be the right car for you. And it's got the only naturally aspirated engine on this list as well, a 6 litre V8 that makes 411 brake horsepower, the lowest power on the list, but it'll still get to 60 in 4.9 seconds, so we're still talking about a sub 5 to 60 car, and a car that creates a thunderous sound along the way too. There was even a 1.6k optional exhaust from factory too, which if you can get, sounds insane. To be fair to the car as well, it actually has held its value pretty well. It was around 45k brand new, which is quite expensive for a Vauxhall, especially one that's a bit of an acquired taste. So the fact that you can get these now starting at around 16k with 20 grand getting you into a 2008 model that's around 70,000 miles is pretty mental. One of the main reasons why I call it an acquired taste too is the fact that it was built to compete with executive cars like the BMW M3, Mercedes E63 AMG and the likes, but those cars got a more premium badge and more premium interiors as well. I do think the VXR8 is cooler, but there's a reason why Vauxhall don't do cars like this anymore. Despite all the attention it garnered, especially in the media, it wasn't a bestseller like the other cars I mentioned. And as the engine is an LS block, it's known to be a pretty reliable reliable car, though getting parts can be a little bit difficult. If you are enjoying this video, I'd love to hear in the comments down below what your personal favourite super saloon is. And if you're new here and haven't subscribed, I make 2 videos every single week. Do click subscribe. I would really appreciate it. I mentioned the F10 BMW M5 earlier, and it's actually ludicrously fast for the money, especially considering you can often find them for under 15 grand. This genuinely might be the best value for money super saloon money can buy. The specs speak for themselves, as does the price. It comes with a 4.4 litre twin turbocharged V8 engine that makes 552 brake horsepower, and it will do 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds, even managing around 190 miles per hour when delimited, which you could get with the optional driver's package. If you want to hit the autobahns and do some serious speeds for a decent price, I'm not sure there's anything that will get you as close to 200 miles per hour within the same price range, except for maybe a ropey Bentley Continental GT Speed or something like that. But this thing isn't a drag car, it can still compete on track, as proven by its Nürburgring time of 7 minutes 55 seconds, 23 seconds slower than the Alfa, despite being half the price these days, and quicker than a plethora of supercars that are on sale at the same time as the M5. I'll be honest though, I'm not a huge fan of the looks. It just doesn't give the aggressive vibes I hope for from an M car like the E60 generation did and the F90 does as well. I think that's helped the car to be so cheap now compared to those two cars, as it's not as modern as the latter and it's not as iconic as the former and many other former M5 generations. You can get some M Performance carbon parts on it which do help, and I still think it's great value for money despite the looks. I also don't think it's fair that the US got the manual gearboxes in these while Europe only got the DCT automatic, especially given manuals make up around 1 to 3% of all car sales in the US per year versus 46% in the UK. These start at around £13,000 and 15k will get you a 2015 model that's done around 80,000 miles. Pre-2012 models were known to be more problematic, and oil sensors, brakes and the clutch slave cylinder are the known problem areas. For our sub 10k car on this video, we have the Jaguar XFR, JLR's answer to the M3, and a car that looks incredibly good thanks to its very well known designer, Callum. It really is pretty, but more importantly, it's only a step away from the ultra rare and rapid XFRS, but it's significantly cheaper despite not being much slower. It doesn't quite have the aggressive looks of the XFRS, lacking the wing and fiddly bits on the bumpers, but it's still plenty of car for the money. And it still gets that insane powertrain too, a 5 litre supercharged V8 that makes 502 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 4.7 seconds, and a genuine complaint made by some owners on forums early doors was the whine of that supercharger, which I'll be honest makes no sense in my head. I absolutely love supercharger whine. I think it's worth looking for one from post 2011, as they got a little facelift that got the front end in particular looking a little more angular, but they can be more difficult to find within our price range, though not impossible. Either way, I do think these cars give off a James Bond villain vibe, which makes sense given the following generation appeared in No Time to Die, or maybe it gives off more of a bank robber vibe. I definitely feel that the looks subtly hark back to older Jags. These start at around £5,000, with 10k being enough to get you a 2010 model with high mileage. JLR aren't known for their reliability, but their engine block is one of the better ones. You will find horror stories on owners' forums which have led to some insane bills, but in general those are few and far between. Worth mentioning, I also saw a few complaints about the infotainment and the likes as well. Now you should definitely check out my review of that Giulia Quadrifoglio because it was absolutely unreal. Thanks for watching, thanks to the patrons, and I'll see you guys in the next one.